Friday, Miami. This is Buy, Sell, Hold Miami, a real estate podcast. I'm Peter Zalewski, condo consultant, expert witness, founder of the Miami Condo Investing Club. I'm joined here by my partner, my co-host, the moderator, Daniel Hernandez, a real estate advisor over at Compass Real Estate in Coconut Grove. He does single-family houses as well as condos. What's going on, Daniel? Happy Memorial Day weekend.
Happy Memorial Day weekend, Peter. I just found out it was a Memorial Day weekend like yesterday. That's why I'm wearing this very festive Memorial Day shirt, right? You got
it
short
looks very
sleeves.
festive.
Yeah, you gotta wear something light. It's getting hot around here.
Much too hot, basically for May is what I would say. So you know what that means? Hurricane season right around the corner.
Hurricane season right around the corner. Well, speaking of, I heard El Nino was coming in town. You ever heard of El Nino before, Peter?
Wasn't he a pitcher for the Marlins?
Well,
Like
so
a real top prospect?
I had the similar question. So I went poking around the interwebs and I found this guy, this meteorologist. I'm not really sure what his name is, but he seemed pretty reputable. Maybe you can help me out with this.
El Nino. All other tropical storms must bow before El Nino. Yo soy El Nino. For those of you who don't habla español, El Nino is Spanish for the Nino.
Those are the meteorologists you like to watch, right, Peter?
Well, typically I like to watch the Spanish language.
El Nino is Spanish.
Yeah. You know, a funny story, not to divert, but there were Channel 7, Fox News or Fox. They had a meteorologist, and there used to be a magazine called Men's Journal, I think. And they did a story about this meteorologist working over at Channel 7, and she was rated the best meteorologist based on a certain demographic. So they interviewed her, and they said, hey, listen, you don't have the full designation. How do you go about collecting the weather? How do you know what you're going to report on the newscast? And what she says is, I watch the Weather Channel before I go on the air, and I basically just copy everything they have. So that's why I love watching the weather.
It's like ChatGPT. You just ask them what the forecast is going to be, right?
That's probably a better idea, although I use it for my horoscope sign, and it hasn't been good lately.
Well, hey, everybody, if you're just joining us for the first time today, this is episode 53. I think Peter and I are calling this season 2 because we've been doing this for a year. And if you missed the show last week, we gave out some very special awards. Peter, I'm actually kind of let down. Nobody has contacted me to collect their NFT trophy.
And if you're just joining us for the first time today, in the bottom left of your screen, if you're watching us on YouTube or if you're watching us on mobile, it's right there in the middle. And that is called The Rundown. And week after week, Peter and I throw these stories. Some of them are crazy. Some of them actually kind of make sense. And we talk about them for about 7 to 10 minutes. And we either buy because we agree, we sell because we disagree, or we hold because, well, we don't know. And we're just kind of waiting to see what finds out. So with that, Peter, I want to jump right into it. The Fountain Blues. So anybody who's watching who's never heard of the Fountain Blue before, I don't know, you're living under a rock. Fountain Blue's been around since the 1950s. Maybe you heard of a gentleman by the name of Morris Lapidus. He's the guy who built it. Well, he didn't build it. Ben Novak built it, but he contracted Mr. Lapidus to build this gorgeous sort of Art Deco hotel. And one building was called the Versailles and the other was called the Chateau. I guess those were the only two names that the French words that people knew here in Miami in the 50s and the 60s, because everything's a Chateau or the Versailles. We got a Cuban restaurant named Versailles. We got a condo termination that we're going to talk about later. That was called the Chateau. So there you go. And so over the decades, Fountain Blue goes into bankruptcy. Somebody buys it. Then the Sofers pick it up in the early 2000s, and they built it into sort of this massive resort. It's got something like 1,500 rooms. And two of the buildings that the Sofers built in the early 2000s, while they fall under the Fountain Blue umbrella, they're actually condo towers. They're condo hotels, Peter. And so one of them's called the Sorrento, and the other one's called the Tresor Tower. And so those are condo hotels. There's about 750 units in there. And in a condo hotel, you can participate as a condo owner. If I'm not using it, I can put it into the hotel pool, and then they'll manage it and rent it out. And seems like a good idea, right?
It seems like a great idea till it doesn't. That's why Airbnb was the game changer. Your ability to grab control and rent it out on your own was a game changer. Prior to that, you had to run it through the system of the hotel, and the hotel charges are big. The hotel demands certain interior. The hotel charges a daily cleaning rate, which might be a little bit more expensive than what you would find out on the street. So Airbnb was a great equalizer. It came around and it changed things, especially for projects like the Fontainebleau.
So then what's the problem? What's happening now with the Fontainebleau? They're not allowing Airbnbs anymore. It doesn't seem like the association would allow them to do that.
Well, it seems to me what's going on is people are starting to get a little bit squeezed. We got an issue called affordability. When money is plenty, readily available, everything is fantastic. People are burning. They're making it rain. They're spending money on OnlyFans. By the way, Miami is the top destination for.
We're number one. We're number one.
Out of OnlyFans. But when things start to pull back, everybody's got to figure out how to kind of make a go of it. And if
it's only $3.99 a week, Peter.
If you're getting undercut as a hotel operator by all these little one-offs, then you probably want to take some steps to sort of try to protect your share of the marketplace. So, it's just the beginning of probably what we're going to start to see which is basically a tension in the air. I'm feeling the tension in the air, Daniel. I don't know if you're feeling, but I'm feeling the tension. A lot of affordability issues. I'm seeing $35 for a hamburger. You got $20 for a burger, $5 for a fry, throw in a tip, which is now 20 to 25%, and put a tax on top of it. Things get more.
Don't forget the milkshake.
Much more expensive. Yeah, well, milkshake on top of that. That's another tenner.
So, a milkshake.
Things are getting, it's getting stress test, and I think when you see a move like this, to ultimately try to force Airbnbers to go ahead and come into the system and or pay a fee, I think that's kind of a tell as to what the state of the the tourism market is. Remember, international passenger traffic through Miami International Airport 2025, it was down for only the fourth time this century. Last time it went down was the pandemic. We had fewer international passengers moving through this place for a whole variety of reasons. Everybody's betting the house on next month when FIFA World Cup begins, and Miami is going to be hosting some of the matches. We'll have to see how that plays out. If that goes like they say in tits up, then we got some problem.
So let me ask you something, Peter. Then I'm actually kind of taken aback. I think I'm as surprised as the association was. So there was this lawsuit that some members of the association put up against the Fontainebleau because they said, allegedly, that the policies that the Fontainebleau had for the folks that did not want to participate in the hotel program, and I need to say like 90% of these unit owners do participate in the hotel program, but there were some holdouts. There's always holdouts. And they were saying that it was effectively undue hardships that the Fontainebleau was putting on these folks who wanted to Airbnb and VRBO their properties, like gouging the housekeeping costs and requiring owners or some certified agent to be present during all check-ins. And so they were really twisting the screws on these guys. And these owners, these holdouts, thought they had a leg to stand on. Well, a judge has said, no, you don't. And I think this is bigger than the Fontainebleau. From my half-assed internet research over here, I'm not a lawyer, but it's something that they could become a template ruling, right? So we got condo hotels all across South Florida, and if owners feel like they're getting their screws twisted by a hotel operator, a judge is going to point to this lawsuit over the Fontainebleau and say, well, you're kind of shit out of luck. So what I would advise to anybody looking at any sort of condo hotel-like property, hey, who's the operator? Look at the condo deck. You got to look at that declaration. You got to read it through, or have your buyer rep read it through for you, because if it doesn't explicitly state how you can rent it and whose whim you are at in terms of all of these fees and these junk fees and all this crap, you could find yourself in a very hairy situation.
Well, and what I would tell you is, prior to the arrival of Airbnb, condo hotels were the biggest dogs out on the street next to timeshares. Timeshares were the worst. What was second worst was condo hotels. People would come in, they'd calculate what they were going to make. But let's consider the numbers. Typically, a hotel, if it's operating 70% occupancy throughout a month, They're doing well. So let's break out the numbers. So you as the individual unit owner, you're paying the premium to go in there because you got the brand operator. And you have to go ahead. You got to pay the maintenance fee. You also have to pay the cleaning fee. There will be VIGs involved along the way. What happens if somebody last minute decides to book a room? How do they decide which room is getting it? And this is where a lot of the allegations of corruption came from, where if you paid off the guy at the front desk and somebody comes walking in, now you're doing it on your phone, but if somebody comes walking in, how do they decide where it went?
Room always is not vacant. Is that what you mean?
Yeah. And this is what was going on. This is why a lot of people, they would come in, they'd find a shiny object. They're saying Miami's got great population. It's got great, it's got a lot of people, I'm sure, doing stuff they shouldn't. Therefore, they need a room. Maybe it's a mistress, maybe something else, but that's a different story. And you have last minute visitors who want to book a room. So they would show up, and certain people tend to get a lot more of the business. And then they went to a model where they said, you know what, let's just bring in all the revenue and we'll split it up, kind of like Major League Baseball does, or maybe the NFL where they split up the revenue. So that was another strategy, but Airbnb changed it. They were able to basically empower everybody. If you wanted to play the game, you did it. If you didn't want to play the game, you went off on your own. You self-managed. You did a whole variety of things. And that's kind of where we've been. However, it's all starting to change right now. Airbnb has jacked up the prices, or individual unit owners jacked up the prices. Why? Because they're carrying costs. So it's a very convoluted game. It's a game where the tourism numbers, we'll see how they play out. But ultimately, when you're making money, everybody loves each other. When it starts to unwind, then you get into a situation which may be like this. And if I could just point out one other thing about Morris Lapidus. Morris Lapidus is interesting because this is the guy who basically redesigned Lincoln Road. Lincoln Road, that pedestrian mall, which is there between 17th and 16th. And let me throw on a little bit of trivia, and some people might not know this. Art Deco was created. Why? In Miami Beach. Why was it created? Because we had the great Florida hurricane of 1926 came rolling through. The demographics changed because we ran into the Great Depression, and they needed an easy way to attract middle class, but it was cheaper to build, and they threw some paint on it. So Art Deco is a result of the failures that happened of the Depression, as well as what happened with the great 1926 hurricane. So it was more so, it was the IKEA, if you will, design of what was going on. And now, because it's stuck around, everybody likes it. Now it's something famous, but it was a cheap way for somebody to put up something and rent out those units, close to 100 years ago.
Buy, sell, hold, the Fountain Blues.
Well, Fontainebleau, if you remember, was supposed to put in a water park. Remember, they wanted to have the slide and all this stuff?
I think they are putting in the water park.
So they're putting in the water park. To me, what it's saying is that the demographics are changing for the Fontainebleau. This is a lot different Fontainebleau than it was in 2008 when they reopened. It was rushed to reopen, and they reopened with Victoria's Secret models prancing up and down the runway. Now the founder of Victoria's Secret, it's got some issues, let's say, with the certain set of files, but that's a different story. So what I'm saying is the demographic has changed. We went from Victoria's Secret models prancing up and down the runway back in 2008 when they were renovating it, to suddenly we got a children's water slide coming, supposedly, and we also have this infighting of individuals. What that says to me is we got some financial tension going on here. They're trying to reposition. Maybe they're dated. Maybe they're the Mandarin Oriental on Brickell Key, which Swire Properties decided to knock down because it was no longer efficient, no more longer effective. I don't know what the idea is, but what I will tell you is, to me, it smells like something is up. So I'm going to have to be on the hold side.
You're going to be on the hold? I'm on the buy just because I think I'm as surprised as those holdouts are. I know they weren't large in numbers, but this makes me a little apprehensive for the whole condo hotel thing going forward.
You should be.
I'm a buy, you're a hold. Well, we were talking about the Chateau building that's at the Fontainebleau, but now we're going into the Grove. Quite the chateau in Coconut Grove. And we're talking about a gentleman by the name of Jose Canero, not to be confused with ball players. You were talking about ball players, Peter. Jose Canseco, not the same guy, but Jose Canero is a real estate guy, right? And he's got this place over here, or had this place over here, that he bought back in May 2025. He paid a cool $17-something million for it, which, nice little chunk of change. Peter, you know how much he sold it for last week?
Tell me.
$45.5 million.
Well done, Jose. Kudos to you, my friend. You got in, you got out, and I'm sure you got plenty of tax deductions, so you're not going to have to pay all those taxes. Well done.
So that's 160% appreciation, or if you're playing the arithmetic game, that's a 2.6x back on his money. And so he flipped it to LAD Group, LAD Properties. Look, it's a small lot. It was he took it down. It was a 25-unit site, so that'll fit into Peter's criteria for a condo termination candidate. Peter, remind everybody what those criteria look like.
Yeah, if you're an investor, you're looking to invest in a property that will be terminated, and you want to get the bump that's going to come from the developer decides to pay everybody out. Typically, you want less than 100 units. You want to look at the balconies. The balconies, if they are glass, they're probably not going to happen. That means that they've done too many renovations. You want rail or cement. And then finally, if there is surface parking, you drive in, you park, and you don't have to go up a step to get into the building and get into your elevator. That is a termination target because it is underutilized. It is obsolete. And chances are it's going the way of the dodo bird.
And what about unit count, Peter?
Under 100. Got to be under 100 because you're hurting cats.
You're
trying to get
cats,
all
even
together.
with 25,
Impossible to do.
50, 60s. Yeah, I mean it's quite the endeavor, right?
It is it's nearly impossible because there'll be a couple of holdouts, i.e. Biscayne 21. You get a few people jam up the whole situation. You almost have to run this down into the ground or you need to take it into bankruptcy court, which is probably the way a lot of them are going to go. So, Jose, kudos to you. Let me tell you, my friend, you deserve a equivalent of a Super Bowl ring. They need to give you a ring to put on that finger. You can show it off. Why? Because now you're a made man. You are legit. And what's going to happen is deal flow. He's going to get a lot of deal flow coming his way now because he actually got one over the finish line. But remember, the first one's